In 1775, Thomas Paine wrote a pamphlet stating that the freedoms of man can only be maintained by limiting the power of government. The pamphlet was called Common Sense. In 2015, it still is Common Sense.
I'm Elizabeth Smith.
I'm Mark Zaccaria. This is Common Sense. Welcome back. In this week's program, we will offer an in-depth interview by State Representative Patricia Morgan with Mike Stenhouse from the Center for Freedom and Prosperity. Their discussion will focus on the center's call for a real investigation into 38 Studios. Regular commentator Jeff Richard will wrap up this week's show with his thoughts on a certain issue that happened in the NFL last week. Between segments, look for Elizabeth and me to pop in with a little thinly veiled outrage as we ask the powers that be our long-running question, are you kidding me? Before all that kicks off, let's begin with analysis of some of the top news stories affecting the Ocean State this week. Liz.
Attorney General David Kilmartin has plenty to say when it comes to getting elected. But what about the 38 Studios deal? We hear nothing except the palpable anger and frustration the average taxpayer expresses in a resigned tone. It's Rhode Island. Today, we all have questions. The Raimondo administration and AG Kilmartin is moving forward with, well, you guessed it, exactly nothing. According to Brandon Belch, GOP chair, as seen in Go Local Prop, the lack of leadership on this issue from AG Kilmartin is glaring. One wonders how much of this is related to the fact that Kilmartin was a State House insider about the time 38 Studios loan program was approved. In the 3 years since the spectacular collapse of this video game company, our elected officials have responded to public outrage with a reluctant trickle of disclosures that can best be characterized as piecemeal, opaque, and completely devoid of self-scrutiny. Unquote. Just this week, the Rhode Island Center for Freedom and Prosperity unveiled a great new website, investigate38studiosnow.org. It keeps watch on legislators and asks the question, do you support an immediate, full, and transparent investigation of 38 Studios? There's a complete list of all elected officials from across the state, and now you can keep track of their responses. I applaud Senator Elaine Morgan, Representatives Robert Lancia and Robert Narnalillo for standing up in support of an investigation. Now, to be fair, the website was just launched and the reps and senators are out of session. The Rhode Island Center for Freedom and Prosperity, led by Mike Stenhouse, aims to hold their feet to the fire and let the great 38 Studios unknown become common knowledge, no matter how egregious it might be. Mark?
Thank you, Liz. This past Labor Day, regular Pro-Joe contributor Steve Frias wrote a column predicting ever more bloated compensation packages for the recently unionized individual home health care workers. If history is any indication of the future in this matter, he's probably right. SAU is all about more, and then even more in contract negotiations. This is a unique case study in labor relations, though. These workers are their own bosses, so the standard management exploitation rhetoric is a stretch, even for seasoned union negotiators. In fact, individual home health care workers were just forced into union membership early last year. It was done in an election that was more of a kangaroo court, aided and abetted by the Rhode Island State Police, no less. In the end, the contract SAU scored for these workers applies only to income they receive from the state for daycare of kids on welfare. Therein lies the rub. After having been herded into the union by a very questionable election, these new union men and women saw their checks from the state dramatically reduced as their new union dues and mandatory political fund contributions were withheld and funneled directly to SEIU. The cuts sustained by these individual operators working out of their own homes won't begin to be compensated by a 3% raise. For the Public Service Union, however, the 900-plus new members they just impressed immediately began contributing an estimated $118,000 per quarter to their new fraternal coffers. State law and regulations already ensure the health and safety of kids in licensed home daycare. The drive to unionize was strictly about tapping a new income stream for SEIU. Steve Frias has a point about the hit the Ocean State taxpayers are likely to take over the years as updated contracts add more and more costs to home-based health care. the individual workers have also taken a hit, though, and it may be a decade before they get back to where they were before being shanghaied by their union. Liz?
Thanks, Mark. As the Hillary for Prison campaign continues to putter on, we must look at the other progressives out there that might take over in the polls. I know that's a painful task, but unfortunately necessary. On the subject of crime, Bernie Sanders' campaign's website reads, "Millions of lives have been destroyed because people are in jail for nonviolent crimes." Okay, stop right there. Millions of lives have been destroyed by drug abuse, a struggling economy, which Democrats, by the way, like to leave it right where it is, a lack of opportunity, and virtually no resources to combat the cartels or the will to do something about it. He goes on. For decades, we have been engaged in a failed war on drugs with racially biased mandatory minimums that punish people of color unfairly. Okay, stop again. The inner city community is right where the government wants it, in poverty. The dependence that is cultivated there is big business. Big government couldn't care less about those folks in poverty. Add to that a culture fed by the glorification of drugs, and you have this dangerous mix. The fact that it's the black community that's most often arrested for drug crimes is because it's sold to them as cool and hip. The ever-decreasing self-esteem of the USA allows this drug culture to fester in more and more communities. Bernie Sanders then says, "It's an obscenity that we're stigmatizing so many young Americans with a criminal record for smoking marijuana." But not one major Wall Street executive has been prosecuted for causing the near collapse of our entire economy. What? This new acceptance of pot is dangerous and should have penalties attached. The progressives want to dumb down society. And who, by chance, would you be talking about destroying the economy? Barack Obama, perhaps? Bernie Sanders, the last thing we need is more of the same. Thank God the GOP has such a deep bench.
Thank you, Liz. That wraps up our news analysis for this edition. Before we look in on Representative Patricia Morgan, though, let's ask the oft-repeated question.
Are you kidding me?
Hey, I'm Gladys. Guess what? The Hillary's having an affair. Are you kidding me? This is my husband, Artie. He's been following this new situation with Hillary. Not for nothing, but I think we got an issue here. You know that bill a couple of years back? You know, everyone was talking about that Lewinsky girl.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
Artie, I'm talking here. I heard she's got her own guy, you know. That guy, Benghazi. We'd all like to know what he looks like. I mean, with the name Benghazi, I figure he's a Sicilian stud. What do you think, Artie? You know what else? That Hillary, she's got to go out in front of everyone at the Senators game. And that announcer, Kirk Gowdy.
Gladys, it's the Nationals baseball as Trey Gowdy. Trey Gowdy, the congressman.
I'm talking here, Artie. Love you. Kisses, sweetie. Oh, anyway, I bet that Hillary and Bill would be on the kiss cam in the third inning, just like that Benghazi will come out on the field. Just like Springer. It'll be all over the place. Hillary's having an affair with Benghazi.
Gladys, it's Benghazi, Libya. It's a place, not a guy.
Libya? Benghazi is in Libya? Where's that? Are you kidding me? Forget about it.
Welcome to Common Sense Rhode Island. This is a program where we try to make sense out of the policies that affect your lives and come up with common sense solutions. And today we have with us Mike Stenhouse, who is the director of the Center for Freedom and Prosperity. Welcome.
Hi, Pat. I don't know there's a lot of sense in what we'll be talking about, but we'll see.
Well, we try to put some sense into it. What's been happening doesn't make sense. There's the issue. First of all, just for our viewers, will you tell us what the center is?
Yeah, the center is a nonprofit organization. We're nonpartisan. We focus on public policy issues. And our mission is basically to oppose the special interest culture that our political class seems to like to engage in when it comes to
Picking winners and losers?
picking winners and losers, inside friends, protecting friends, and instead trying to make the taxpayer and the voter the focus of public policy in a real and meaningful way. So we oppose special interest
So
politics.
the winners are the special interests and the losers are the taxpayers and their wallets and their freedom.
We have to pay for all those breaks we give to everybody else. So we believe in educational, economic, and individual freedom, and that's the path to prosperity, not government control of our lives.
Yeah, that's how we started in this country, isn't it?
It is.
I often think about what our founding fathers would think about what has grown out of their wonderful ideas for this country.
Yeah, it used to be pretty limited and enumerated powers that government should have, but they've grown to basically encroach in almost every area of our life.
Yeah, since the late 50s, early 60s, government has just insinuated itself into every part of our life.
You know, and people seem to accept that. I don't want to be critical of the young lady, but the statement made by Miss Rhode Island in the recent Miss USA, forget the fact that she fumbled the question, but the one thing she did get out was that, well, yeah, maybe we do need the politicians to tell us when we should do something right or when we should do something wrong. I think that's a pretty close quote. And the fact that young people are being conditioned to look to government as the first place that can help them in their lives, rather than people looking to themselves, rather than people looking to a free market economy, is very disturbing. And again, I'm not saying that about her, but I think that's purposely been
Government will take care of you.
a message
They'll solve all your
that they're
problems.
putting out for, and we couldn't disagree more. We think government can only get in the way, can only limit what you do, and in the end, honestly, control you. So we'll talk about that.
Well, you know, and I honestly believe that people know better about their individual lives. I couldn't begin to go into somebody else's house and tell them how to raise their kids or what is better for them to spend their money on. And yet government feels completely comfortable doing that.
Well, they want to tell us that you have to go to our schools and being taught the way we want because of where you live. They want to tell parents that we have to, I'm going to be a little crass here, we're going to force sticking needles in your kids for vaccines or other ailments without giving you any choice or limited choice in whether you can oppose that. You know, the Obamacare, you have to buy insurance. I mean, you know, this is really, I mean, if I may, you know, the state publishes this thing called an owner's manual, ostensibly that we, the people, are the owners of our government. But how many of us really believe that? How many believe that we own our government? Does it feel more like the government owns us and is running us? Does it feel more like the special interests are owning government and running them? So, you know, this is really a classic public policy debate. I mean, this is what's been going on for hundreds of years in this country, and our job is to provide that other side of the debate so that just the big government side isn't the only voice that's being heard out there.
You know, it's funny you bring that up. I've been in my house for over 30 years, so I finally paid off my mortgage. And, you know, you say, oh, I own my house. Except I don't. I lease it from my town. And if I don't pay that monthly leasing amount, they'll come and take it from me.
Well, or if we let programs like Roadmap Rhode Island really take hold in the state, you could have your house taken away by eminent domain. So yeah, do we really own anything?
Or the property values could be affected by the Roadmap Rhode Island.
That's right.
I think that's even kind of more damaging. I mean, I've worked really hard to pay off that house and to keep it in good shape and to kind of preserve its value. It's something that I want to retire on, right? The value there. And they could just as easily put a affordable housing high-rise next to me, and that would affect the value, affect the property values of everybody.
You know, the proponents of Roadmap Rhode Island want to say that what you just said is to use their terms, is a racist attitude, that we don't want low-income or people of color families living near us. It has nothing to do with that.
No.
It has to do with you chose, in your case,
I
and
worked
many
hard.
family, you worked hard, you chose an area based on the zoning in that area, and you invested in a home that has an assumed value. And we just know that when you put up larger structures and you start playing with the zoning, that property values can often go down. And for many families, their property is the core of the financial stability of that family, right?
It is the biggest asset in most families' home.
And
so that when they get older, they have that value. And some sell it and live on the value. Some just live there and know that they're secure in their homes for the rest of their lives.
It's the core of the financial security of your family, for most families, and for the proponents of Roadmap Rhode Island type thinking to say, well, it's all good in the name of social diversity. There's nothing wrong with social diversity, but there is something wrong with social diversity when it hurts property owners.
It's really not about diversity. Let's just pull it back to freedom.
Right.
When I was growing up, I grew up in the country, right, on the farm country, and we always believed that the American dream was about people of modest means, because we were very modest means when we lived out in the country, making the right choices, working hard, saving, and then with all those good decisions, you might get into that starter home. And then you'd work harder and harder. You know, you'd keep making those right decisions, right? You finished school. You went to work every day. You did your best so that you'd get a promotion. All those kinds of things. And you went from the starter home to the next home to the next home. It was about hard work and good decisions. It wasn't about government saying, you want to live there? We're going to make it so you can live there. It was about the individual working to get to that place.
Yeah, and just think that, the Roadmap Rhode Island proponents point to the fact, well, there's nothing in the plan that is written that is threatening everybody, but that's why, we've been studying this issue for 3 years now. And if you understand the root philosophy behind that, it's people like you living where you want to live in single-family zones. You want a little privacy, you want to build a little property value. Did you know that they believe that you are the problem, that you are the cause of social injustice, that you are the cause of economic injustice, that you and those of us like you are, it's environmentally unsound. So single-family homeowners are the enemy to the Roadmap Rhode Island. That's why they want to pull people through carrot and stick tax incentives and tax increases on those who live where we want to live. We're going to get paid more taxes. Those who live where they want you to live, you're going to get enormous tax breaks. It's patently unfair, but they want us living in these high-density, green neighborhoods, and somehow they believe that that is economic development.
Well, for me, it is really about freedom, which I think is what your center is a proponent of. It's about each of us having the freedom to make decisions for our lives and to earn the things that we get in our lives and not have government. We all know we need government, just don't take so much from us.
Agreed.
Every time you get a headache, you take an aspirin. Every time the state's new Department of Commerce gets a headache, they take another try at rebranding Rhode Island. Are you kidding me? This week, the Ocean State's newly minted Secretary of Commerce, Stefan Pryor, announced that all our state's woes were based on the failure of the Discover Beautiful Rhode Island campaign. Not to worry, Secretary Pryor quickly added, as if to calm our fears. His team is working on yet another unified approach to attracting tourists, businesses, and itinerant Powerball players to Little Rhodey. The blue and yellow signs at the airport connector and many of the roads crossing the state border are now relics of the Chafee administration. They'll soon be replaced by the lucky winner of the latest brand marketing RFP, which has already had more than 40 responses from interested consultants around the nation. West Warwick's own Adam Media Group has already started erecting billboards to show their entry into this latest state logo sweepstakes. Their tagline, "Whatever you do, Rhode Island." Is that supposed to be whatever you do to us, Rhode Island? Or just whatever? The fact is that spending $5 million we do not have on a promotional campaign will not bring droves of tourists and a land rush of new business relocations to Rhode Island. Lowering the corporate tax rate, eliminating property taxes on automobiles, cutting the state sales tax, teaching permit issuers a little bit more about customer service, and paring back overblown state budgets would all be excellent steps in that direction. Sadly, though, every time anyone on the inside of the state's political power structure starts thinking in those terms, they immediately reach for the aspirin and wait for the feeling to pass. Are you kidding me?
Welcome back to Common Sense Rhode Island. Today we have as our guest Mike Stenhouse, who is the executive director of the Center for Freedom and Prosperity.
CEO, if you want to be technical.
The CEO. All right. We were just talking about your mission and about how the center looks at personal choice and individual freedom as the cornerstone for American society, and that's what's made us great for the last, how old is the United States?
Many hundred years.
A couple hundred years, exactly. We were talking about Roadmap Rhode Island, and you know that was developed, was supposed to have been developed as an economic development plan. What we got was a housing plan, but it was supposed to be about economic development. How do we get business into Rhode Island so families can start improving their way of life, or what they have here? I thought, again, it's a housing plan. It has nothing to do, or very little to do, with economic development. It seems that, excuse me, I'm going to just say this, I know you're nonpartisan, but it seems like Democrat leadership thinks that if they say jobs in the economy before anything that they talk about, that's economic development.
Well, I think people in Republicans, Democrats, and liberals and conservatives, unfortunately, many people feel that way too.
Well,
not free marketeers like us, though.
Economic development, yes. Getting a really strong and vibrant business climate here, jobs climate here, is not just about saying the words. It's about really doing the things that make our economy, the foundation of our economy, stronger. Not putting more Christmas tree ornaments on top of an already bare tree. But one of the things that our Governor Raimondo, is proposing now, one of the ornaments that she wants to put on that Charlie Brown tree, is a study from the Brookings Institute. Correct?
Yeah.
What is the Brookings Institute?
Well, they're a center-left, relatively moderate overall national think tank, very big, very powerful. They would almost be the opposite of the Heritage Foundation, kind of thing. But they have...
So fairly liberal in there.
Well, this one division is very liberal.
Okay.
Overall, they're seen as moderate left.
Okay.
But they have a division called the Metropolitan Urban Development or something division, which is headed by a guy named Bruce Katz, who Governor Raimondo has had in the state multiple times, both before she was governor, trotting him around the state for a kind of dog and pony show, and even afterwards, before her first State of the Union address, or State address, excuse me. He heads up this division of Brookings, which is very progressive left.
Liberal.
And where we criticize the Roadmap Rhode Island plan for being light on economics, this $1.3 million study, which by the way is being funded largely by the Rhode Island Foundation, which sadly is funding a lot of progressive left causes in the state right now.
Well, that and hedge fund managers.
Yeah. But Rhode Island Foundation, once again, in the middle of a leftist agenda here. But this study will be the details that Roadmap Rhode Island didn't have. Now, we know pretty much what's going to be in this study, because this is all cookie cutter approach. Anyone that thinks we're customizing a plan for Rhode Island is wrong. Our biggest complaint with Roadmap was a centralized plan out of Washington, D.C., or out of some think tank that's being imposed on Rhode Island.
They just used to say about the Soviet Union central planning.
There you go. And that is exactly what the Brookings Institute will propose. They will propose a metropolitan/urban-based renewal strategy that will be a centrally planned crony system of economic development, just like 38 Studios, which we'll talk about shortly, where certain winners and losers will be selected. If you develop here, if you're this corporation, if you're this developer, you will get huge tax breaks because we want people to live here, and if you live somewhere else, you're going to pay for it. And it's this cronyized version of economic development.
So it's taxing people more, perhaps?
Well, they have to, in order to get people to live someplace, you have to provide an economic incentive. So come live here and you...
We'll give you money to build,
we'll subsidize
to build affordable
yeah,
housing here, and we'll give you a preferred tax rate.
That's right, and the rest of us have to pick up the slack. And that's exactly the strategy. And this is what you're going to see with this Brookings Institution plan, which is going to be really just the implementation, we believe, of Roadmap Rhode Island. They both have smart growth as their core. Roadmap Rhode Island was developed on a smart growth philosophy. The Brookings Institution Metropolitan Development strategy is built on smart growth technology. They're basically brothers to each other and sisters. And we're going to be doing what we can to provide an alternative and to expose the bad economics behind what will come out of this Brookings Institution
you know,
plan.
one of the things that always mystified me is, you know, I'm from West Warwick, and we actually have a lot of affordable housing there, a lot of inexpensive apartments. I couldn't understand why we never hit that target, right? Every city and town has to have a certain amount of affordable housing so people can live there, people of all kinds and economic abilities can live there. And West Warwick has always not made that number, and I couldn't figure it out. So I asked when we were in the Finance Committee, and affordable housing, for people out there who don't know this, the only affordable housing that counts is housing that uses state dollars, state or federal dollars.
Subsidized
it has
housing.
to use government dollars.
That's right.
So if you live in a mobile home, that's inexpensive housing. That's very, very nice for a lot of people. Just fits them perfectly. That's not counted. If you're an owner of a triple decker and it's inexpensive, that's not counted because there's not federal dollars.
Well, it's federal control. They want
HUD
that.
money.
Right.
It's federal control.
Right.
It's about taking from others.
That's right.
To give.
It's the
Instead
government
of
wanting to
people
build
finding-
their little utopian societies in designated areas. So we're going to subsidize those housings, and when you subsidize, you get designated as affordable housing, which means that if you're affordable housing, you get tax breaks. You pay lower property taxes than somebody else.
Or you get a subsidy.
That's right, as a developer, right.
The developer
That's right.
can charge market rate.
That's right.
The person living there only pays a portion of their income because that's all they can afford, and that's fine. But who pays the rest?
That's right.
Everybody else.
They use water and sewage and electricity and schools, just like the rest of us, but they're not paying their fair share, which means the rest of us do.
Well, it raises everybody's
That's right.
property
Everyone
taxes
else's, yeah.
because they don't pay as much. But then our tax dollars go in the pockets of the developers. And maybe if government got out of the way, it would find a natural place where it should be.
Yeah, I mean, just think about it conceptually, even at the broadest level, that we no longer are going to be free to live where we want. If we want to live somewhere, we're going to have to pay a higher price. If we live where the government wants us to live,
you pay a lower price.
You pay a lower price. And that's just fundamentally wrong in America. Not only is it unfair, but it cuts to the core individual freedoms that we all cherish in this country.
You know, it cuts to the core of what I think of as America and what has made us strong, right? Again, it is individual freedom. It's about people working hard, making right choices, developing their life, making choices for their life that works for their lives. I've traveled in Eastern Europe. I've traveled in countries that were under the Soviet bloc. And their way of life is not as good as ours. I'm just going to say it, right? I'm an American. I believe in our way of life. And somehow this starts moving us towards that you will live in this kind of an apartment.
Well, quite simply, we have to make a decision. Now, do we want a centrally government-planned economy, or do we want a free market economy? We're going to be coming to that fork in the road very soon in Rhode Island.
Okay, well, so we're going to take a break now, and we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Lynette. I'm a tourist, And I gotta say, are you kidding me? I'm not from around here, but I wanted to talk to y'all for a minute, if you don't mind. I'm here visiting, and I've seen some things that y'all are okay with that just plain scare me. First of all, your Senators Reid and Whitehouse look like they're voting for that Iran deal. Well, bless their hearts, they must have hit their heads. They really don't know what they're doing up there. But to agree with that affects me even where I come from. And then I heard your governor wants to put tolls all over the place. What's up with that? Y'all are going to live in a cage around here. But then I heard y'all don't like to go anywhere because it's too far. Darling, it takes me an hour and a half just to go to my hair salon. You'd die if you tried that. And what's up with that Mayor Lorza? I see he wants to have a direct flight for them illegals from Guatemala to here. Well, that's just harebrained right there. Then I saw a survey that says Providence is one of the most unfriendly cities in the world. Well, I guess that makes sense when you're getting told to stay at home because it'll cost money to blink. So I guess I'm just going to go hit the beach, hand over a 20 for parking, and then I guess I'll just head back. At least the river I get to stare at don't cost me anything. Y'all are just bona fide crazy. So all I gotta say is, are you kidding me?
Welcome back. Today we're talking with the CEO for the Center of Freedom and Prosperity, Mike Stenhouse. This is an organization that fights for individual freedom. And just recently, you became involved in the 38 Studios debacle.
Good word.
All right. What does 38 Studios have to do with your mission?
Well, our mission openly states we oppose special interest politics in favor of freedom-based politics. And there's probably no example of special interest politics, insider cronyism than with 38 Studios. It's the public. It's easy to understand. The public gets it. The media gets it. Those of us who follow politics and public policy get it. You know, for two major reasons. First, it's this idea that by giving money or publicly risking taxpayer dollars to support an individual business is somehow economic development is a false one. And the fact that we would give it to an insider like a Kurt Schilling. And this former Red Sox player doesn't agree with what that former Red Sox player tried to do. And that it was done further in the dark. That the public was lied to, General Assembly legislators were lied to get the money through. There was a conspiracy that the recent Channel 12 investigation pointed out. Obviously now, between the former Speaker Fox, maybe even former Speaker Murphy, with a direct order given to the Economic Development Corporation to put this deal together and to make it happen, all sort of in secret. That is just government at its worst. It's special interest politics at its worst. And as usually happens in those cases, we, the taxpayers, are going to be left to foot the bill. And we need to get to the bottom of this. We need to understand exactly what happened, who happened. Was there criminal activity? Was there just unethical activity? Was there political pressure applied? If so, who did it? All of that needs to be exposed so we can end this culture of special interest politics in this state once and for all.
Well, one of the things that strikes me about 38 Studios is the secrecy with which it was done, clearly. It showed up. I wasn't in the legislature, so I can't tell you exactly what happened, but my understanding is it just showed up. There had been no hearings on it. The deal hadn't been vetted. The appropriateness of government getting into the deal. This was really venture capital, right? Which anybody who's paying attention, venture capital is really a risky form of investment. Yep. People of wealth will often come together in groups. In fact, we have several in Rhode Island.
In the private sector.
In the private sector. They're risking their own money, but they do diligence. They study. Anybody who comes to them with an idea, they study it, They make sure that they have figured out whether it's viable or not, how much money that entity is really going to need to be successful, and whether they have the right management, and all of these things. I mean, they will study a particular idea for 6 months, 9 months, whatever it takes to get all of the answers, to have them in front of all of the partners, so that every partner in the deal knows what's going on, what the advantages, disadvantages, what the potential for reward or loss is. That wasn't done here.
No, when taxpayer dollars are involved, we must have that done publicly. I mean, we shouldn't even be considering investing that kind of money or fronting that kind of a guarantee. But in the first place, but it needs to happen fully, the way you said. I mean, I remember getting a CD of the actual floor vote. I can't remember if it was just the extra 75 that increased it from 50 to 125. It was the whole 125. But the whole thing literally took a few seconds, a few minutes, for something that big to get passed on the floor of the House, and that's an abomination. And
when they want to find the money, they find it, but when they want to find it for bridge repair, it's not there. But we digress. It is that idea that they created a pot of money, and a lot of hands were in that pot, but we don't know who the hands were connected to.
That's right.
And we don't know why they were there and what they actually gave of value.
2 points, if I could. First, do you know that we're doing it again? Do you know that in the current Governor Raimondo economic plan, the new EDC director or economic development guy, Stephen Pryor, is going to be given $50 million pot of money or something like that to play with? So we're doing it again.
We're doing it again.
It may not all go to one large company, but we're doing it again.
There are some limits on it.
Yeah, there are some limits, but still we're doing it. But again, the first issue here, this is not economic development. It can be part of an economic development strategy, but to say that by targeting and giving away taxpayer money to targeted and special insiders is an economic development plan in and of itself is completely bogus. There might be limited cases where we would do that, but there is no other larger economic development plan. This is it, and it is completely wrong.
Let me just, again, not talk necessarily about 38 studios for just a minute. It's not about giving people money to come to Rhode Island. It's about making Rhode Island so attractive that they want to come.
That's right.
And right now, they don't want to come. And it's not about whether there's a pot of money to entice them here.
That's right.
What you get when you create pots of money is you get 38 studios. What you really need to do, I know you have your chart, but it's about making energy less expensive, about making property taxes less expensive. We're really highly taxed with property taxes. It has to go down. It hurts everybody. There's all these regulations.
Yeah, we
are
10
so
major
onerous.
categories, 53 subcategories in our Senator's report card. A new one will be coming out this fall. But basically, D minus, D minus, D minus, D, 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 F, D, D minus, F. So it's a special interest culture that, to your earlier point, creates a poor business climate, a poor living climate, and by giving tax incentives to just a few people does nothing to help the overall business and economic climate itself. It's broad-based tax and regulatory reductions that will help the state, not targeted special interest insider deals.
So many of the bills that are passed, the regulations that are promulgated, are about giving the special interest that's in your face and wants something from you an advantage over somebody else. And if you really want a good business climate, you have to work on the foundation.
That's right.
I keep saying we keep putting all of these ornaments on the Charlie Brown tree. The Charlie Brown tree is not full. It's not inviting.
It's a good analogy.
You can't. You have to make a full tree that's open, free to free enterprise, to the things that make businesses able
and we
to
can't
compete.
Plan which businesses, what industries are going to grow up. In a free market, we will have industries. Alex and Ani came out of nowhere. That wasn't planned, right? So in a good open society with fertile ground, if you would, to keep your analogy, will be amazed at the diversity and different types of unexpected businesses just going to grow up, and entrepreneurs and innovation will start. We need to create fertile ground, not just give the special deals.
And that's why 38 Studios is again so bad.
Yes.
Right? Because this was people who had access to our money, saying, let's create a pot of it and see what happens, right? I know we didn't study it. I know we don't know whether it'll work or not, but it doesn't matter, because once we got a pot of money, we can put our hands in it.
Imagine if you use those money to reduce taxes on every family and every small business in the state. Or to repair a bridge. Imagine,
so we don't have to put tolls up.
There we go, bingo.
But we keep doing these things. And back to your original point, people have a right to know who started it, who benefited from it. I'm not convinced that Kurt Schilling benefited from it. I think he lost a lot of his own money too. I think it was a lot of insiders.
Yep, and that's why we're calling for new investigations, new document releases, so we can get to the bottom of it.
Okay, and we're going to take a break right now, and we will be right back.
Everybody knows the Central Coventry Fire District is bankrupt. What many of us don't know is what the district's fire board is doing to correct the problem. So here's a newsflash. They're advertising for additional firefighters. Are you kidding me? You can't make this stuff up. It's true. The Central Coventry Fire District advertised on internet job board Indeed.com for part-time firefighters this past August 7th. Apparently, the posting was live until this week when court-appointed receiver for the district, Mark A. Pfeiffer, heard about it. You can imagine Pfeiffer's reaction. The district doesn't have funds to meet its current obligations, including existing payroll, so what business do they have hanging out the Help Wanted sign? Court documents filed by Mr. Pfeiffer as part of his request for a temporary restraining order against the fire board include an email from Vice Chair Marie Baker to one of the eager applicants. In it, Baker indicated that resumes were being reviewed and that interviews would begin presently for the multiple positions she claimed were available. Can you imagine the chief of the Central Coventry Fire District try to keep a straight face during these upcoming interviews? Would he or she close out the meeting by suggesting that there might be a chance of an unpaid internship for the applicant? They say karma can come back to bite you. I pity the poor firefighter whose week includes winning an Edsel, buying Syrian war bonds, and being selected for a job at the Central Coventry Fire District. Are you kidding me?
Common Sense TV here with Representative Mike Chippendale, who is the Vice Chair of the House Oversight Committee, who had once looked at 38 Studios. Representative Chippendale, in light of Judge Silverstein's ruling to release all the documents related to 38 Studios, including depositions, what are your hopes that a independent investigator could be assigned through the House Oversight Committee?
Well, I'm cautiously optimistic. As many folks know, when we first started with the oversight hearings, the attorney for the committee itself had actually gone into court and requested that those documents be released to assist the oversight committee in what it was that we were working on. There was no immediate ruling on that, and that did sort of retard the entire process, and it made it very difficult for us to get past what we already had as far as the documents, which were requested from the former EDC and from other various outlets and branches within state government, and also some private entities. So we had reached a point where we were at an impasse. We just couldn't get any more information out. We were hoping that the court would unseal the documents and at least make them available to us, but unfortunately that did not happen. So naturally, when I heard that that Judge Silverstein was going to be releasing or ordering the release of these documents, that definitely made me happy, in the sense that I feel once we start to see what came out in those proceedings, it'll give more or new life, if you will, to the Oversight Committee, if the Oversight Committee is going to take this on again and tackle it again, which I'm hopeful that it will.
Are the current seated members of the House Oversight Committee, are they the same as when this first started?
Yes, there's been no changes that I'm aware of to the committee seats. Typically, in January, every time the session is reseated, there may be some adjustments made to the memberships, but as far as I know at this point, the membership is the same.
Thank you very much, Representative Chippendale, for your time.
Thank you.
Welcome back. Today we're talking with Mike Stenhouse, who is the CEO for the Center of Freedom and Prosperity. We've been talking about individual freedom and how that helps every Rhode Islander live a better life. It's about getting government out of this idea that they're picking winners and losers and using our money to do it. And obviously within this, the 38 Studios scandal, debacle, whatever you want to call it, has come up. I know that you and 3 other good, clean government groups have come forward because even after 5 years, it's been 5 years, we have not had an investigation of the behind the scenes in that 38 Studios loan. And in our budget hearings, in our budget debates, I have consistently every year asked for an investigation. And this year, boy, I put in the amendment. It lasted 15 seconds before the speaker shut it down. They simply don't want any kind of daylight on the 38 Studios.
Well, they don't want any accountability. And that's the whole reason, Representative, we need to have an investigation, because those involved need to be exposed and held accountable.
So it doesn't happen again.
That's right. So
with the 38 Stadium.
That's right. So people know that if I get involved in this kind of insider, secretive, backroom, crony politics, I might be at risk of being exposed and maybe voted out of office someday. This is the only way to discourage this type of activity, is to expose it and stamp it out. So therefore, our group, Ken Block's Watchdog Rhode Island group, Rhode Island Taxpayers, Operation Clean Government, and our center made 4 demands.
Okay.
First, we called on Superior Court Judge Michael Silverstein to unseal all the documents in that court case, that lawsuit that's currently going on right now.
Let me stop you on that, because that's what brought this up again. There was a document that slipped out that hadn't been redacted, which means they take a magic marker and they take out anything that they don't want us to know, right?
That's right.
So a document snuck out, and the document kind of revealed that...
It solidified the conspiracy between the Speaker, Fox, and the Economic Development Corporation.
That one man said...
Yep. Make it happen.
Make it happen. We'll give you $75 million.
So imagine what we'll find if all the documents get unsealed. So that's our first demand. Second, we're calling on the governor to launch an independent investigation. She says the state police are going on. Even with the state police, there have to be questions about politics.
5 years.
And it's been going on too long. I heard Colonel O'Donnell, nothing against him, but to hear him say, I'm talking all the time with the Attorney General.
Yeah, not much interest from that office either.
It just raises questions. The Attorney General.
5 years.
Yeah.
I'm just going to keep saying this because 5 years, the state police, the Attorney General, certainly they've gotten to the bottom of this by now.
Yep. We need
Why don't they tell us?
Well, they don't. I don't know. But we need an outside investigator, divorced from all Rhode Island politics, and we need it to happen simultaneous with these other ones. The governor's position, I'm sorry, is just not defensible, that we have to wait for this investigation or this court hearing to finish before we start something else. That doesn't have to happen. In Washington, D.C., we have these parallel things going all the time. The third demand is on Speaker Mattiello to support Chairwoman Karen McBeth's oversight committee by getting her those unsealed documents and giving her the subpoena power, or at least granting the subpoenas they want, so we can conduct not a criminal investigation in the House, but just ethical, political. What happened? Tell us a story, what happened. And fourth, our last demand...
I put that bill in this year, too.
And the last demand is what you alluded to earlier, is that we can't let this Pawtucket Red Sox Stadium relocation turn into 38 Stadium. Make public the current terms. Let's debate the negotiations publicly. Let's bring that into the light. At least we're aware that this situation is going on with Pawtucket Red Sox. So we're halfway there. Let's make it fully transparent, and that's our fourth
Fully
demand.
transparent, way ahead of time.
That's right.
It shouldn't be 2 days before the vote
Right.
is supposed to happen, or 1 day before the vote is supposed to happen. It's supposed to be about everybody,
Right.
individuals, because we have a collective wisdom, and we can make good choices.
That's right. Let's have that rigorous public debate before the fact, not afterwards.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming.
Sure.
There's a lot to talk about, and you'll come back, I'm sure?
Would love to.
Great. And thank you for listening. Common Sense Rhode Island has been introducing some of our presidential candidates and allowing some of their supporters to talk to us about why they like them. And today we have with us Lacey McGreevy, who was our original newscaster here on
Yes,
Common
I
Sense
was.
Rhode Island back in the winter.
Yep.
Welcome back.
Thanks, and thanks for having me.
Well, I'm glad you could come and talk to us about Donald Trump. He's been getting an awful lot of headlines and media attention since he announced for president. Why do you like him?
Well, honestly, I had the opportunity of meeting him in New Hampshire and a lot of the other candidates that were running. And right from that point, I heard him talk, I heard his ideas, and I went, he has to be president. I love his idea of how he wants to simplify the tax plan. He also is against Common Core, which, let's face it, hasn't worked really anywhere. And he can just speak to people. He's getting people excited because he doesn't talk like a politician, because he's not a politician. He's a regular person, and that's why I like him.
He kind of says it how he sees it,
Yes,
instead of being real politically correct. In fact, I think I heard him at the first debate saying he didn't have time for political correctness. Our country's broken and he wants to fix it.
And that's what I like about him, and that's what a lot of Americans like about him, and that's why he's polling pretty much higher than all the other Republican candidates.
It's a big field, and it's a great field of candidates,
Yes.
which is why we're doing these segments, because we have so many good ones. He's been really vocal on immigration. Did that attract you, or?
To be honest, it does attract me too, but the most thing was his tax ideas and his business mind, and really wanting to bring jobs back to Rhode Island is what really got me. But yeah, to bring jobs back to Rhode Island, we have to get rid of the illegal immigrants and make it so we can get those jobs and Americans have those jobs, and stop the anchor babies. Sorry if that offends anybody, that word. It doesn't offend me.
All right. He obviously is a very wealthy man. I think it was $8 billion.
Yeah.
So he's the quintessential businessman, though, right? I mean, he knows about business. He knows how to make it work. He's made his money in real estate. Is it all real estate?
I believe so. I don't know exactly how, if it's all real estate or not, but I know he does know how to run a business, and America needs to be run like a business right now, because let's face it, with our debt and our economy, that's the only way we're going to be helped.
Yeah, well, I think over the last many years, we've lost kind of the free enterprise system that made America so great.
Yes.
Right? Capitalism works, and I'm
Yes.
glad he's a real proponent for capitalism, because it works. Wherever it has been used across the globe, people's income and their standard of life has risen. China is one that we think of. They used to work for what, $2 a day?
Yeah.
Now they're getting actual wages, and they're building a middle class over there. So capitalism works,
Yeah.
and he is not apologizing for being a person who believes in the power of capitalism.
Oh, and I love that he wants to tax companies that are doing most of their work out of the United States. Give them a higher tax to sell their goods in the United States. Yeah, we need to do that. We need to make money there, because we're losing jobs.
We are losing jobs, and wages are not rising because of a lot of different things that are going on in the global economy. But he seems to have a clear idea of what he wants to do to attack that.
Yes.
All right. So, do you know how people can get in touch with the Trump campaign?
If they go online, I believe if they just Google Donald J. Trump, they can get in touch with them. And Make America Great Again is this, I believe, is the site. They're up and running. You can buy the shirts, the hats, all sorts of stuff.
All right. Well, thank you very much for coming, Lacey.
Thank you for having me.
Good luck to you.
Thanks.
I must admit to being a Patriots fan. Hard not to be when your home team is so successful. As a team, they have performed some remarkable feats in a sport full of very talented athletes. Now, it hurt to watch recent events as the league went to court. The best quarterback New England has ever had was on the front page for the wrong reasons. Lots at stake for players and owners. Today, the front page, well, that was actually yesterday, I'm sorry, of every paper in America had Tom Brady's picture on it. Now, a legal decision vacated the 4-game suspension imposed and arbitrated by the NFL. I decided that I had to read all the words provided in all the legal documents available online, and that would be all the briefings and the court testimony that a judge would have had to consider when deciding what to do. Now, needless to say, when you spend millions of dollars on lawyers, you get millions of words. One example is the 457-page appeal hearing transcript. According to the records, the appeal day started at 9:28 in the morning and lasted until 8:27 in the evening. Now, I wonder how long the lunch break was. Then there was the brief by the Players Union, which went on and on about how unfair the process was, accusing the commissioner of several procedural failures, all adding up to taking unfair advantage of Tom Brady. Now, if football wasn't such big business, we wouldn't think that 1 pound of air difference in a football should take up so much of our time. But football has lots at stake if the sport is perceived as shady. And I guess it's true that every sport that uses a ball has a standard for that ball. Now, the NFL generated $7.2 billion in revenue in 2014. This is big business, and the 32 teams in the league all share in the profits. Now, as a sidebar, the league dropped its nonprofit 501c6 tax status this year after severe criticism. Now, it will now pay perhaps $10 million in federal taxes, but it doesn't have to disclose the salaries of its executive officers. Okay, good for you, Mr. Commissioner. So I read and read, trying to form an opinion as to who was in the right. Fact 1, 11 footballs were tested at halftime at the January 18th AFC Championship game, Patriots versus Colts. And I was found that they had 11 pounds of air versus the NFL's minimum of 12.5 pounds. So who did it? And what effect did it have on the outcome of the game? Now, the who part stopped at the 2 support staff responsible for blowing up footballs. They got suspended. Now, who told them to do it, if they did? Now, that talks to the narrow possibility that nature did it with no human intervention. Not sure about that argument. As to the outcome of the game, well, Tom Brady was 11 for 21 with 95 yards and a TD in the first half, using the 11-pound balls. When the Colts brought the ball pressure to the attention of the officials and they found what they did, they pumped the balls up to 13 pounds. Now, in the second half, Mr. Brady went 12 of 14 passes for 131 yards and 2 TDs. Now, too bad he didn't have the bigger balls in the first half. The Colts were crushed, and Brady and company went on to the Super Bowl and another trophy. But the interval since the Super Bowl has not been kind to Tom Brady. Instead of frolicking through the offseason, he has been in the company of lawyers, and we all know how much fun that can be. But a judge has now ruled in Tom's favor. Although the league is appealing that process, it could take a long time, so no delay for Tom to start off and do what he seems to do best. That is win football games. Now, I wish the Patriots good fortune for this season and look forward to watching as much of it as I can. I don't have a season pass to the stadium, nor do I work for or know any corporations that would hand me tickets at will. And the thought of sitting through one hot or rainy or frozen stadium game doesn't really work for me. Just sitting in my favorite recliner with instant replay, deleting the commercials if I am willing to give up the real time, that has appeal. Of course, those fantasy football nuts had a hard time in the draft recently. Who would get Tom, and would he be available all season? Now, if you don't know much about fantasy football, go to Wikipedia. It amazes me how grown people can get so excited about make-believe football. It is a very complicated fantasy world with several variations available. Now, the wiki folks reference someone who claims that America's workplace may be losing $6 billion in lost productivity as we fantasize. Wow. And fellas, women folk are also football fans. The viewers of live football are 48% women. Now, don't know about the fantasy part. The fastest growing merchandise segment in the NFL is, you guessed it, women's apparel. Now, wonder how many number 12 jerseys are wandering around America. Now, thank you for watching, and God bless.